Hello everybody. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about why it is that I am Hindu. Now, I don't really prescribe myself as being Hindu because Hinduism is really just a term set for all the practices set east of the Indus River, and it really is multiple different forms of worship there. It's more broadly known as Sanatana Dharma, which also this also encapsulates the other belief systems such as Jainism and Buddhism. These are things that are rooted in truth. It's something that leads you to truth. So I don't call myself Hindu because I just feel like that is reality. That is the truth. It's leading you towards that direction. And what are these simple truths? They're simple truths that reincarnation exists, that we are all part of the same divinity, part of the same source, and we have all of that divinity already within us, already inside of us. It also believes in laws of karma and laws of dharma as well. Karma being your actions and the result of those actions, and dharma being your duty and what it is you're meant to carry out in this lifetime. And all of these principles are not so very prevalent in the westernized religions that are of today. And that's why, for me, it was important for me. I didn't want to become part of a religion because I knew that a religion was merely a belief system that is supposed by people having a certain amount of beliefs instilled upon them. For instance, I'm looking around YouTube and I'm seeing these videos titled, "If you are a Christian, can you believe in reincarnation?" Or "If you're a Christian, can you go to Hindu temples or chant mantras or this or that?" And at the end of the day, for me, that's a bit curious and suspicious. That why would somebody want to limit their own mind and their own questioning and their ability to think and to believe certain things because they have denoted themselves to a specific religion, a specific dogma. For instance, when I going into my story growing up, I was somebody who was not brought up in a religious household. The biggest religious tie I had was my haven't actually introduced myself on this channel yet, so at this point I'll put a little thumbnail here and I'll do that. My name is Brandon Christ, and my last name did used to be spelled Christ, so that's something that I just always had in the back of my mind, where I always assumed, okay, well, I assumed that my family and my grandparents were too are Christians, so I suppose myself as Christian, but I never went to church and I never really had any special connection with Jesus, never saw him as any special figure. But when I was growing up, I always just had this sense in me that there was something that was looking out for me, and I couldn't tell whether this force was good or bad because there's just that things would happen and things that would happen for me, and I would see that as a good thing and I would be happy about that. And I would just basically, I didn't care, right? As long as my family and everything was safe, I felt like whatever I was, praying to, and I saw it as God. I just couldn't tell whether this force was good or bad even at that time. And I think why is because it's just a non-dual force, is a non-dual type of teacher connection that I was having, connecting with source at the time. And so growing up, I had experiences of going out of body, and I thought this was completely normal and everybody else had these. And I just kind of thought that they were really like lucid dreams that I was having, until I kind of realized later on when I grew up and in college that it was more beyond that. And so going into my college years, I was surrounded by people who were Christian, but they kind of did the whole thing where, they would sin the entire week up until Saturday, and then Sunday they would be good, and then the week would repeat and they'd be in the same cycle. But there'd be no growth and no change in those people. And so I was somebody, because I had went through rejection with one of the girls when I was on the swim team, I was constantly aimed on self-improvement, which led me ultimately to discovering Sadhguru videos, which led me to discovering yoga, and so on and so forth. Specifically, I want to talk about the story in college when I first questioned God. I was working at a Christian camp I was working as a lifeguard manager, cleaning the pool. And as I was cleaning the pool, I just had a question to myself. I just thought, like, what was there before the creation of everything, before the creation of the universe? So I tried to imagine it, and I was like, well, at some point, right, before there was something, there had to be nothing, right? At some point, right, that's what I really care about. Because for the creation of the universe, if the universe were to be created, then what we're talking about, the universe is everything. So even if there's just a speck of something, that would be the universe. A speck would be the universe in an empty, world. So it was obvious to me that everything before had to be emptiness. So I shut my eyes. And I thought to myself, I was like, okay, this is nothingness. And it's lonely and it sucks. But I thought that this is nothingness. And the idea of nothingness, that alone is somethingness. Because having the ideation of nothingness in itself, right, like it is an idea. Not, the idea of nothing is something. And who is that one who's observing the nothingness, right? If somebody is observing that nothingness, then that means that there is a creator there, there is something there. And so basically that whole anomaly and how that, if there was nothing, but then there was a conscious observer that to observe that nothingness, that own blip, that freak would create the entire universe, would create everything, because it is, for a conscious observer to appear from nothingness, how is that possible, right? So that's kind of like how I imagined it. It just came to me as I was cleaning the pool, and I was like, this kind of seems about right. A few months later, that's when I began watching Sadhguru videos, and this was something where in college, none of my friends watched Sadhguru videos or were Hindu or were spiritual. So it was basically me on my own learning this stuff, kind of pivoting on my own lane. I had a couple like spiritual friends, but they were on kind of like their own paths that went in loops and circles. And I was on my own, and I was pretty focused on not listening to what others were trying to tell me, because I felt like I had a connection and I knew the path that I was on was true with Hinduism and learning. First, I started with Ayurveda, where I fixed my entire diet, started eating the proper foods. That in its own was an amazing cure. And then I started learning more about meditation and being conscious about everything, conscious about what I'm doing, watching my thoughts and all of that, and meditating. I eventually, from college, I ended up working at Disney for some time in between jobs. And when I was there working at Disney, I had a moment where, to be honest with you guys, I ended up getting mala beads because my ex, who was also my second girlfriend. I dated a girl in 8th grade for like 3 months that I had mentioned in a previous video. This is my only second girlfriend. Never had any girlfriends in college. But I had heard that she was apparently, before I started dating her, like she was into witchcraft. And I was like, I don't know much about that. So I bought mala beads, Rudraska mala beads. They happened to be from Nepal. I had no idea. I just kind of blindly did it. And they were legitimate Rudraska beads and everything. And I wore that. I thought that would like act as protection, like against in case like she was, into some dark magic or whatever. But before meeting her, I had listened to a Shiva mantra for the first time, and I was just going to surrender to that Shiva mantra. And I went to lay down in my bed. And while I was working at Disney, I was trying just to see if I could go out of body, trying to test that by just going into like sleep paralysis and seeing if I could do it. And after listening to that mantra, I basically, I set the intention just to take a nap. Took that nap, felt myself click. I was in such this peaceful zone with so much bliss going throughout my entire body. And I was like, I know I'm in sleep paralysis right now. And it was cool too, because I was like in this state where I was like I could slowly fade in and see visions and stuff if I were to relax into it. But I decided to sit up, and I had had out of body experiences before, but none of them consciously, never when I tried to actually do it. And so this was cool because I sat up and I'm like, I know I am out of body because I'm not sitting up right now. I know I'm not sitting right now because the covers are up to here on me, right? And I'm sitting up and I'm like, I know I'm out of body right now. And then I snapped back down and I was back in bed and the blankets are still up here. And I was like, that was so cool. And it was just a cool experience because like you see it, you believe it, it's there. And you're like, okay, pure bhakti moment. All right. And then moving on, after college, I went and moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico for work. I worked on the software systems for the DMV in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And when I was there, that's when I believe my first introduction, it was a very like spiritual type of town, like a lot of like elderly people like would retire and move there, and there were a lot of like spiritual minded people and spas and things like that there. I went there, I went to a Zen center first, and at the Zen center I was trying to get an idea of what it was, and it felt to me like it was just, well, Zen Buddhism is really just sitting there meditating in pure silence. And to me, nothing wrong with it, but it was boring because I was very much into the mystical aspects of yoga, and that's what I was trying to learn more. Zen Buddhism was very much not about any of the mystical stuff, just about you meditating, eyes closed, focus on your breath, focus on sound. It wasn't what I was interested in because it felt like to me people were just trying to find silence, find peace, and I could find that silence, I could find that peace. That wasn't what I was looking for. I was just more so bored. It's like I can be at peace, I can be, chill and happy and meditate, I feel like, and enjoy it, but I was just like bored. So I did that for a little bit. It was just like a after work kind of activity, and it was interesting to definitely see that. Then when I was in Santa Fe as well, this was the time when I had to kind of transition there. I was realizing that if I wanted to follow the path of yoga more, I was already doing like 6 of the 8 pillars, except I was not really understanding connecting with the deities, and because I did not have a lot of trust at that time. And I was also not understanding, well, mainly it was that. And so when I moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, there were a lot of churches around there dedicated to Christ. So I ended up talking to Mormons. I ended up talking to Christians, attending church, just to kind of understand their relationship with Christ and how that worked. Because I really didn't know. Like, I knew myself, I didn't know how to connect with something outside of myself in that sense. And so when I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, as I said, I was speaking to Mormons. They would come over, visit to me at my place. There were a couple of guys a bit younger than me, and I'd ask them questions and to see, because I was curious, I was genuinely interested, and see what they'd had to say. And my main thing was, hey, if Jesus is real, right, we have all this life out there, I'd have to imagine God made at least another one of those planets have life on it. And I'm like, not all of it's going to be necessarily human, maybe humanoid, but not human. So I'm like, how do they reach God? Does Jesus go to them in human form? And I'm like, do they say the word Jesus, or do they have a different way of saying it? And I'm like, what's the harm if they have a different way? They call him something different, or they think he looks a different way. What's really the harm there? How do the aliens reach salvation, right? How did the people before Christ reach salvation? How did the people of Asia reach salvation? Did none of them reach salvation? And I was met with answers basically, if, somebody, because I gave them the example, there's this young Buddhist girl, right? And she lived a lovely life. And then you're telling her she's going to go to hell because she didn't know anything about Jesus? And they're like, no. Well, if somebody hears about Jesus and then they turn him down, then they'll go to hell. But if they don't hear about Jesus, then they'll be given another chance in heaven to hear Jesus' name and accept it. And so I'm like, then what's the point of missionaries? Because if you're saying that if you just go around yelling Jesus' name, you just infected all these people, because if they turn Jesus down, then they're going to hell. But if you never told them to begin with, then God would give them a second chance and be like, hey, you followed Buddha, but Christ was the only way, which doesn't really make sense to me. It just never made sense to me, because I don't know why a God would be like, if it's not Jesus, no good. That just doesn't make sense to me. Why uniform only one person, one form? God is unlimited in nature. So that's kind of why my own mind rationally, I kept on having these questions about Christ. But because I am very Western indoctrinated, and you don't really see it until you see it, through movies and TV shows, Indiana Jones, all that, it's hard for me to connect with the Hindu deities at first. But ultimately it was Jesus. When I had a moment with Jesus. Actually, I took DMT one time, and this was my moment where I connected with Jesus the first time I really did. And it was basically him telling me not to, because I was having a scary experience with it. It was the first time I ever tried DMT. I was having a scary experience, so I prayed to Jesus. I said, please save me. And he did. He basically showed up. I saw him, and he was like, everything's fine, relax. And I did. And I had moments too where I'd connect with Jesus. I would just be in a dream, Jesus, please save me. And he would come, he would show. So I did develop a strong connection with Jesus. And he was showing me, ultimately, he was showing me then to worship Kali. And the way he did that is I was in the Santa Fe Mall, and I walked past this African store, and I saw Kali in there. I saw a tapestry of her in there, and that was the first time I saw her. And ultimately, I ended up purchasing that tapestry. It was very interesting. The reason why it was important it came from Africa is because I'm very interested in history, and I wanted to find the root of humanity, the origins of humanity, and Kali is the origins of humanity. She is the roots of humanity, all the way back in ancient Africa. Her worship goes back till. So that's why that was important for me to see that as well. This wasn't just one civilization's views of how these gods looked and how these gods were named. It was really these are the creators of humanity, and they were there at the beginning of times. So that was a big part for me, and he basically, as I said, Jesus then passed me off basically to worship Matara, the Buddhist form, and Makali, the Hindu goddess. And what was interesting is I did a lot of this completely blindly, besides listening to like TRS and Rajarshi Nandi and having a bit of guidance that way and Sadhguru and stuff. I maybe read a couple Sadhguru books, but that was it. But I was ultimately doing the right thing. I was chanting the name of Matara in the morning and the AM, and then at night when I was going home from work right at 5, perfect timing for it, I was chanting the Kali mantra 108 times on my way driving back home from work. And I did this for an entire summer. And what I can say is, like, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, it's probably to like, yes, like, what if you don't know what you're doing, like that, you know, this person is saying that every single day he's going home, he's chanting this thing, he doesn't even know what it means. But it felt right. It felt like it was the right thing to do, and it felt like I felt good afterwards, and it felt like it was basically, I was being guided. So it was 3 months after of continuously doing this that ultimately it just became so secondhand. Like I started to understand, connecting with Bhairava and all these other deities. They started to kind of come into the picture. Then I ultimately, from here, I was so confident in wanting to connect with the deities further, and I wanted to see the temples that I decided to book a trip to Nepal, later, end of that year. And I also moved the same time because my heating in my apartment broke on New Year's. I had to relocate my things. My company allowed relocation, and there was no way my heating was getting fixed. So the opportunity came to move to Alabama, and I'm like, well, that sounds lovely and warm right now. So I decided to move my things to Alabama, and there it was actually a very beautiful place that I rented. I was just renting a home, but it had in the back, there were a bunch of cows. There's a field of cows back there. Unfortunately, they were slaughterhouse cows, so it was also kind of a sad thing, but it was also a very cool thing. But while I was in Alabama, that's when I eventually took my trip to Nepal. I made a video about it on this channel, and I will make another video about it, but if I started talking about my Nepal trip again, I'd probably go, it'd take me at least another 20 minutes, and I don't want to overextend this video. So I'll break this video, this topic of why I'm Hindu, into 2 different parts, most definitely. And I think really why that's important is because there really did come a point in this journey where things started to change even more rapidly. And that's when it became, I was no longer just discovering this for myself, but then I had a guru who ended up being able to teach me and allowing me to follow along, learning the Bija mantras, teaching me the pronunciation, and teaching me also like how the universe works and all those things. His name is Project Kali on YouTube if you wanted to go view his videos on his channel. But that's all I'm going to make for today's video. I am going to add just a little bit more to that, because I basically ended up my trip to Nepal, and I'll continue off that next time. But it was 3 months after my journey to Nepal, and in between, I was listening to all the different mantras and the Mahavidyas and all that, and then I came across Project Kali on YouTube, and he was basically doing just that. He was teaching people how to basically pronounce and how to pass off the Bij mantras for both the Shiva Tattvas and the 10 Mahavidyas. So I was practicing with the 10 Mahavidyas already, but all disarray, different order, all that. Maybe some of them I was leaving out, I didn't really understand. I didn't even understand really. I understood Shiva, I didn't understand Vishnu and Brahma at that time, and so he really helped me just by watching his videos and asking him questions, was really able to help me, point me in the right direction. So lots of thanks, lots of gratitude towards him. And one last thing I want to leave off on this video is, since I talked about Shiva and Shakti Tattvas, the difference between them. Shiva Tattvas are basically, it can teach you how to turn the dial of desire down in your life. Let's say you're somebody who likes chicken wings and you never get enough chicken wings. All right, every time chicken wings are ordered, you want 6 of them and you only get 4. So Shiva Tattva can basically turn it down. So those 4 chicken wings are just as good as the 6, okay? Or with the Shakti Tattva, that's basically the enjoyment factor and the ability to kind of receive chicken wings. So if you turned up the Shakti all the way on the Muladhara chakra, your desire for chicken wings would go through the roof. Well, what's desire good for? Desire is good for motivation. So if you have the desire for chicken wings, 6 chicken wings, then you'll go out and get chicken wings. If you have no desire for chicken wings, then you're not going to have the chicken wings to begin with. The idea is we don't want to have no chicken wings unless you're vegetarian, or we don't want to have 1,000,000 chicken wings. So the idea is we just want to have a balance. It's like any economy. We have to balance our bodies the same way, right? We don't want to be someone like for the heart chakra, where we don't want to have 1,000,000 different boyfriends and girlfriends, but we also don't want to be completely alone where we don't have anyone, around us. But, you can't extend your heart too wide, but you can't make it too little. And so that's kind of the whole idea of this, is to balance out the system. If we were all Shiva, we would be very reserved and very from within. If we were all Shakti, we would not know when to stop. We would keep moving. We would never even sleep. So you need to have a balance of the two, right? If we take a graph, imagine I just drew a graph here, and we take a wave. Every single time the wave reaches the x-axis on 0, that's a point of Shiva. So you're listening to a song, yep, it's Shakti. Once it hits to the 0, on the x-axis, it's a Shiva, down to Shakti again, Shiva, Shakti, Shiva, Shakti. That's all for today's video. Without further ado, Jai Mahakal. You are all beautiful people. Amen.